If Utopia 101 is going to build it up, then I'm going to knock it down. Here's your look at the Nacelle very important toy, Robo Force Wrecker. Wrecker was built to be the jack of all trades for the RoboForce line. He has a tool for every occasion. Sadly, due to the rise of Utopia 101 line, those occasions never occurred. Reassigned to use his staggering strength and empathy chip to the most mundane jobs in the basement of the police Rhombus headquarters, Wrecker eventually teams up with Max 89 to help protect the innocent and keep an eye on the increasingly erratic Utopia line, as well as Hundred and his minions. Wrecker returns as part of the very important toy line of Nacelle Company. This very important toy line is a deluxe articulated 7.5-inch tall action figure packaged with its own graphene-inspired collector-friendly window box. Pfft, Ralph's got nothing on this guy. Before we get a closer look at the brand new Nacelle Robo Force Wrecker, let me go ahead and thank the folks over at the Nacelle Company that did provide this sample we're about to have a look at. Both Wrecker and the previously looked at Max 89 are slated to release on various online sites December 2022 for the price point of $55. Grabbing the tape measure, let's measure off to the very top. Is my tape measure stuck? It seemed to be stuck. Measuring right, though, either way, right to the very top of Wrecker's head, the figure stands about 7.5 inches in height, or the figure's 19 centimeters tall. And speaking of Max 89, let's move on over Wrecker, and hoping he's not going to fall over on me. We're going to bring in Max 89. Now, in both the cases, you can already see that the figures are using suction cup feet. Normally, again, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. In fact, I actually had Max 89 on my bookshelf, and because my bookshelf is straight wood, the smoother surface was more than enough to have Max Steel standing, or Max 89. Unfortunately, here for my backdrop, being that my backdrop is too coarse, not smooth enough, both of the figures have a more harder time to stand, so I may even just in fact have to hold them. But you can at least see in both the cases here, the Max 89 is about the same size as Wrecker here. As for Wrecker's accessories, the figure comes included with a bouquet of flowers. Now, we don't know the actual sizing of what these things would be compared to normal humans. A bouquet of flowers for Wrecker may very well be in fact a big giant tree for us humans. It's been wrapped up on the bottom here, and in fact it can actually fit inside his hand. One thing I do really like about the hand of Wrecker is that the hand does open and close, so you have these big giant pincers. He's compassionate after all, so we can go ahead and take the flowers and put them in his hand, and he can offer up those flowers to somebody. Oh, that's so nice. The figure also comes included, provided I can get him again to stand. He comes with these big giant working tool arms that clamp onto the back of the figure's body. Let's just go ahead for right now and remove the bouquet of flowers. I'm going to put those to the side. Picking the figure up, located here on the back, you actually have two holes on either side. You take these giant arms and they plug into the back of the figure's body. The arms themselves, I'm just going to put Wrecker down here for one moment. The actual arms don't have any articulation that I can see. They're molded nicely with some additional dark wash of black added in there as well, just to bring out a lot of the details of the sculpt that they put in there. Some additional silver has been also afforded to this as well. And in both the cases, I actually have these big giant linked chains. The chains themselves are plastic, and then at the bottom of it, any one of the tools that he would have used for demolishing or constructing things. I'm not sure really exactly what this would be, but I can tell you it's pretty heavy. You can plug this onto the back of the figure's body, and when you are plugging it in, if you plug it in, you technically could do on both the sides, but again, there's no articulation here. This doesn't even rotate. So when you are putting it in place, you may find it's not in the right location. You can simply just move it around until you get it to the place that you want. Just going to go ahead and twist this into the back of his body, enough that hopefully it's going to stay in place. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Now, the other arm actually does have itself a big giant hook. It's a pretty cool looking arm. Again, you've got yourself individual links of silver that have all been interlocking with one another. You've got the big giant hook that sways back and forth on the back. Again, this just plugs onto the back of the figure's body. As you probably would imagine, adding this onto the back of the figure's body that already sways back and forth already does cause some conflicts when it comes to poor Wrecker here properly standing. He has so much weight here from the front, and then he teeters back and forth sadly on these suction cups they provided on the figure's feet, that the figure's going to have a little more of a tougher time to balance. I was actually surprised, in fact, I was able to get him balancing. But again, a lot of it, I do have to again stress, has a lot to do with where you're deciding to put these figures. Suction cups don't necessarily work with this sort of environment that I'm reviewing these figures in. But if you put them on a smoother surface, even just a tabletop or countertop, the suction cups obviously will have a lot more to suction onto, and the figure will stand a lot better than it is right now. If I put him down, I can kind of lean him forward. But yeah, you've got a lot of the weight now really with the hooks on the arms and the back of his body, of course, adding a lot of back heaviness that the figure's going to take a tumble, probably if I'm going to let this guy go. It's a bit of a shame, obviously, for the sake of reviewing this guy, that's harder than for me to be able to show you guys how well he stands. Again, if I had myself a smoother surface, it may not be as big of an issue as I'm having right now. Certainly a side note, something I did mention when we had a look at Max 89, is I do wish that they could have included not only the suction cups already defaulted on the back of the figures, on the bottom of the figure's feet, but maybe also swapped out feet instead. You can just get either blocky feet, or I guess as well, you could just take these off. I did actually take off at one point Max 89's feet. It did actually shorten the height of the figure, and it essentially would just be sitting against the plastic instead of sitting against the suction cups. The suction cups are also on ball joints, which really doesn't unfortunately help when it comes to stabilizing these figures and getting them to stand properly. Getting a closer look, though, needless to say, at Wrecker, I really like the designing of this one. Much like the Max 89 that we looked at before, that's based on the original Robo Force toy line from CBS Toys. Some of you may very well have even collected them, or maybe even still have them in your collection to this day. One thing that certainly that Nacelle has done nicely is updated the design, which again still sticks to the same core idea of what the original Wrecker would have looked like. A lot of the yellow and a lot of the black from the original toy would have still carried over to this figure, along with very much recognizable stickers, specifically the one stickered here on the front of his body. I really like the head sculpt as well. Very clever and very cool, the fact that they put these big giant eyebrows. You can see that the eyebrows, and these, by the way, are not articulated, does result in one of the eye being a little more closed and the other one being a little bit more surprised and alert. The head sculpt, by the way, as a side note also as well, seems to have better articulation in the head. When we looked at the Max 89 in the previous review, he only seemed to have just a straight swivel back and forth. Wrecker, on the other hand, seems to have a full ball joint, and that's pretty good that they included that. The figure is actually well constructed. A lot of heavy plastic, too. Nothing feels hollow at all on these figures. In fact, maybe the hollowest or the lightest things would probably be the arms that jet out from the back of the figure's body. Of course, now you got these extra weighted pieces on the back with the hook, and whatever tool this may be on the bottom. Again, you've got some really nice detailing done, mostly here in the black. There really isn't a lot of paint happening here, but they've more than made up for it with a nice looking sculpt on the back of his torso, all little hoses and tubes running from below his body, kind of giving you the idea of really how this robot would be able to function. As we already had a look at, he does have himself a pincer hand that does open and close. Nicely done to see that. This also does sway back and forth, and it doesn't rotate necessarily, but at least it does open and close. But then on the other side, he's got this big giant jackhammer. The jackhammer doesn't move, it doesn't rotate or anything along those lines. It's basically just one molded piece continuing from the rest of his forearm here. There are no other connecting points that I can see where you can actually take these arms and attach them to any other part of his body. Like there's no parts to the top, there's nothing on his shoulders or anything like that. But at least you can take them off. If you do find he's a little too back heavy, by all means, simply just remove those. Again, you got some really nice detailing done to it. The only thing, again, I would have said, moving forward, certainly with this toy line, or even if they decide to reissue these figures down the road with a second edition, have the option available where you can swap out these suction cup feet. They work well for a gimmick, but I don't think they work well with a figure as detailed and as heavy as this, especially when you get the likes of Wrecker, where you're adding already weight on the back of his body. You've already seen me already now having to hold this guy in hand. Getting the balance on a smoother surface is less of a hassle as what I'm doing right now. On a coarser surface like I got right here for the reviewing purposes, he has a harder time, certainly a real hard time, to get him to properly stand. For the articulation here, though, nonetheless on Wrecker, his head, again, already mentioned, is on a ball joint, so you can take the head and rotate it all the way around. You can have the head looking down and looking up, and you can also have it rocking slightly back and forth. The arms rotate also all the way around, these big, clunky arms. They also hinge out, similar to when we had a look at Max 89. Hinge them out also on this side as well. Each of the arms, by the way, do have ratcheted joints on the elbows. That's the same on both the sides. And of course it will vary. This hand does have the pincer. This hand doesn't have any articulation other than just the jackhammer. I mean, that's just, again, it rotates here, but only more so rotates at the bicep. It doesn't rotate anywhere past the point of the elbow. The figure does also have a waist swivel. A little bit tighter on this figure. In fact, I think he had a waist swivel. Maybe, yeah. No, he doesn't actually have a waist swivel because of the way they've sculpted the belt. The thing about this figure is also, I've noticed on mine, is that this leg is a little on the looser side. The leg goes forward, the leg also goes back, and as well you can get a splits to about there. The figure also does have a hinge joint that allows both the leg to hinge forward and back. He has technically a double hinge, one to the top, one to the bottom. So you can actually have the leg swaying forward, or you can also have it bending back. Again, the legs on Wrecker here are a little on the tad more looser side. Again, I really like the designing of this one. The only thing, again, I would have said for the problems of this figure is only really chalked up to the suction cups. And again, I really wish that the figures didn't have suction cups necessarily. Displaying them on a smooth surface, not to beat a dead horse here. Smooth surface is fine. Coarser surface like this doesn't work so well. Overall, again, nice looking figure. I like the coloring on this one a lot more. He has a lot more of the brighter yellows, obviously, against the backdrop of the black. He stands out a lot more as well, if I'm just going to move him over to the previously looked at Max 89. And while I maybe necessarily did have a Max 89 or the original Max Steel from Robo Force, I know I didn't have Wrecker. But if this is what any indication what the original toy line would, or the original toy of Wrecker would have been, the brighter yellows, it certainly would have been something that I would have had as a kid if I found him locally in stores. And obviously, to show you here on the turntable, Wrecker does a much better job of those suction cups sucking onto whatever they need to do in order for the figure to stand properly. Coarser backdrop, not so much. Smoother surface, you're going to have an easier time. The actual arms on the back don't actually off-kilter him as bad as I thought it would have been. I thought with the extra weight on the back of his body, it would have really pulled the figure back, but actually the way you have him leaning forward like this, it sort of does do a nice job of balancing the figure in an upright position. Again, I really like the look of Wrecker. I might even say I like the look of Wrecker just a little bit more than Max 89, even though I did have the original Max Steel. The look of Wrecker here, both with the yellow and the black, and again, you've got the big giant arms on the back of his body, does sell for a nicer looking figure, in my honest opinion. In both the cases, in fact, actually, the Robo Force line from Nacelle are slated to release, again, December 2022. Again, I keep looking at the proverbial calendar here over the side wall. We're well into near the end of December. We're going to be celebrating New Year's pretty soon. So the likelihood of them actually starting to ship in December is slim to none. I would suspect, if anything, that they're probably going to be starting to ship in January, early January 2023. And right now, many of the online sites that you usually go to buy your action figures from, the Nacelle Robo Force stuff is over on the sites for $55, about give or take, for each of the pieces. Again, you get a really nice, detailed, super articulated figure. I really like the chunkiness of these. Big, heavy plastic. It does translate, of course, to a little more heaviness when the figure's unfortunately sitting onto their suction cup feet. While I do like the idea on paper of suction cup feet, I do wish that they could have given you at least a swappable option available, popping out those suction cups and instead swapping them out to just blocky feet. I might, maybe, I don't know. Like, the Max 89 stood fine on my shelf. I'm sure probably the same is going to be as well for Wrecker here. If you do have problems, I'm sure you can also just simply take the suction cups off. I've done it already. They actually just attach by ball joints. Just pop those off. They're a little harder, granted, to put back in, so if you do change your mind, they're going to be harder to put in than they were to take out. But there's that as an available option as well. It's going to obviously reduce the height of the figure just by a little bit, but that's one workaround if you're not crazy about the suction cup feet. Either way, though, a big thank you to the folks over at Nacelle that did provide this sample of the brand new Robo Force Wrecker that we can have a look at in this review. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Is this a figure line you'd like to get on board and collect more of? Certainly weigh in your comments down below in the comments section. And as well, if you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly do want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.